My name is Aristotle. Over the centuries, many have studied my ideas. My life has been a journey in search of causes, of the hidden reasons behind everything, from the motion of the stars to the beating of the human heart.
Tonight, I would like to tell you my story not as a distant philosopher, but as a man who has spent his life asking questions.
Welcome, dear listener, to a journey through time. Close your eyes, settle into comfort, and let me guide you through the life of one of history's greatest minds. Tonight, we travel back more than 2,000 years to ancient Greece to walk alongside a man whose thoughts would shape civilization itself. His name was Aristotle, and his story begins in a small coastal town where the Aegean Sea whispered secrets to those who would listen. Picture, if you will, the northern shores of Greece in the year 384 before the Common Era. Here, nestled between rolling hills and the sparkling waters of the Mediterranean, lay the town of Stagira. It was a modest place, neither grand nor insignificant, where fishermen mended their nets each morning and merchants traded goods brought from distant lands. The air carried the salt of the sea, mixed with the scent of wild herbs growing on the hillsides. In this tranquil setting, in a house of moderate comfort, a child was born who would change the world forever. The boy's father, Nicomachus, was no ordinary man. He served as the personal physician to King Amyntas III of Macedonia, a position of considerable prestige and responsibility. In ancient times, the profession of medicine was often a family tradition, with knowledge passed carefully from father to son like precious heirlooms. Young Aristotle would have watched his father prepare remedies, observing how certain plants could heal, how the human body functioned in sickness and in health. These early exposures to systematic observation, to the careful noting of cause and effect, would plant seeds that would later blossom into revolutionary methods of scientific inquiry. Imagine young Aristotle in those early years, a curious child with dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. He would have explored the rocky shores near his home, turning over stones to examine the creatures beneath, watching the patterns of waves as they crashed against the coast. The natural world was his first teacher, presenting endless mysteries to a mind hungry for understanding. When his father traveled to the Macedonian court at Pella, the boy may have accompanied him, witnessing the workings of royal power, the discussions of politics and warfare that filled the palace halls. But childhood's innocence cannot last forever. When Aristotle was still quite young, perhaps 10 years of age, tragedy struck. His father Nicomachus died, likely from illness, despite his medical knowledge. Shortly thereafter, his mother Phaestis also passed away. The orphaned boy was taken in by Proxenus of Athens, who may have been his uncle or perhaps a close family friend. This guardian recognized something special in the young Aristotle, a brightness of mind that deserved cultivation. Under Proxenus's care, Aristotle received an education befitting a young man of his station. He learned Greek language and literature, studying the great poets and dramatists. He learned rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking that was so prized in Greek society. He learned about the natural world, building on the biological teachings his father had begun. The education was thorough and diverse, preparing him for a life of intellectual pursuit. Yet Stagira, for all its charms, could not provide the highest levels of learning available in the Greek world. For that, one needed to go to Athens, the gleaming jewel of civilization, the city where philosophy flourished like nowhere else on earth. And so, at the age of 17, in the year 367 before the Common Era, young Aristotle made the journey that would define his destiny. Picture him traveling southward, perhaps by ship along the coast, watching the Greek islands pass by like stepping stones across the azure sea. Or perhaps he traveled overland, following ancient roads through valleys and over mountain passes, each mile bringing him closer to the legendary city he had heard so much about. Athens awaited him, and with it, an opportunity to study at the most famous school in the world. The academy had been founded some 20 years earlier by Plato, himself a student of the great Socrates. It stood in a grove of trees sacred to the hero Academus, from which it took its name. This was not a school in the modern sense, with classrooms and formal schedules. Rather, it was a community of thinkers, a place where the greatest minds of the age gathered to discuss profound questions. What is justice? What is beauty? What is the nature of reality itself? These questions hung in the air like incense, debated in long conversations that stretched from morning into night. When Aristotle arrived, Plato himself was not present. The master was away in Syracuse, attempting to advise the tyrant there in governance according to philosophical principles. In Plato's absence, the academy was being run by Eudoxus of Cnidus, a brilliant mathematician and astronomer. Also teaching there were Speusippus, Plato's nephew, and Xenocrates of Chalcedon. Young Aristotle found himself surrounded by intellectual giants, men who could discuss the most abstract concepts with clarity and precision. Imagine his first days at the academy. The initial nervousness of a young provincial man, aware that others had been educated in Athens from childhood. The excitement of encountering minds as quick and curious as his own. The long hours spent in discussion, walking along covered porticos or sitting beneath ancient trees, wrestling with ideas that seemed to shift and transform even as you tried to grasp them. Plato taught that the world we perceive with our senses is merely a shadow of true reality, that perfect forms exist in a realm beyond our physical perception. A beautiful flower in a garden is beautiful only because it participates in the form of beauty itself. This was heady stuff for a 17-year-old, no matter how brilliant. Aristotle proved himself an exceptional student. His mind was sharp, his memory prodigious, his capacity for sustained thought remarkable. He did not simply accept what he was taught, but questioned, probed, tested every proposition against the touchstone of reason. Plato, when he returned from Syracuse, recognized in this young man from Stagira someone special. Some sources suggest that Plato called Aristotle the mind of the school, recognizing his intellectual prowess. Yet even as student and teacher developed deep mutual respect, differences in their thinking began to emerge. Where Plato saw the material world as inferior to the realm of forms, Aristotle's attention kept returning to the concrete in particular. His father's training as a physician had taught him to observe actual bodies, actual symptoms, actual treatments. His childhood explorations of nature had shown him the fascinating diversity of living things. While Plato looked upward to transcendent ideals, Aristotle looked around him at the world as it actually was. This was not rebellion, but a different temperament, a different way of seeking truth. For 20 years, Aristotle remained at the academy. Think of that, 20 years in the same place, engaged in continuous learning and philosophical dialogue. He transformed from a teenager into a mature man of 37, all within those sacred groves. He became not just a student, but a teacher himself, leading discussions and developing his own philosophical positions. During this time, he wrote extensively, though most of these early works are lost to us now. Ancient sources tell us he wrote in dialogue form, following Plato's example, and that his prose was as polished as flowing river of gold. The academy was not isolated from the tumultuous world of Greek politics. Athens was constantly engaged in alliances and conflicts with other city-states. Macedonia, Aristotle's homeland, was growing in power under King Philip II, son of the Amyntas whom Aristotle's father had served. This connection would prove significant, though none could yet foresee how. Then, in 348 or 47 before the Common Era, Plato died. He was approximately 80 years old and had lived a life of unparalleled intellectual achievement. His death marked the end of an era for the academy. The question of succession arose. Who would lead this great institution? Many expected it might be Aristotle, by now one of the most prominent members of the school. But the position went instead to Speusippus, Plato's nephew. Some scholars suggest that Aristotle, as a resident alien rather than an Athenian citizen, was ineligible for the position. Others speculate that his philosophical differences with orthodox Platonism had become too pronounced. Whatever the reason, Aristotle made a decision that would profoundly affect his future work. He left Athens. After 2 decades in the city, he departed for new horizons, seeking a different environment for his investigations. He was 37 years old, fully educated, intellectually mature, and ready to pursue his own path of inquiry. His destination was Assos, a city on the northwestern coast of Asia Minor in what is now Turkey. Here ruled Hermias, a former fellow student from the academy who had risen to become tyrant of Athens and the surrounding region. Hermias was unusual among Greek rulers, a philosopher king of sorts who genuinely valued learning and surrounded himself with intellectuals. He welcomed Aristotle with great honor, providing him with resources and support to continue his philosophical work. At Assos, Aristotle established a small philosophical community, gathering around him several former academy students and continuing the tradition of philosophical discussion and investigation. But something else happened here as well, something that would bring personal happiness into his life of the mind. Hermias had an adopted daughter named Pythias, who was also his niece. She was intelligent, educated, cultured. Aristotle and Pythias fell in love and married. Later, they would have a daughter, also named Pythias after her mother. Imagine Aristotle in these years at Assos, in his late 30s, married, settled, pursuing his research with new freedom. The coast of Asia Minor was rich with marine life, and here Aristotle began the systematic investigations into biology that would become one of his greatest contributions to science. He would walk along the beaches, examining tide pools teeming with strange creatures. He would dissect specimens, carefully noting their internal structures. He observed octopi and cuttlefish, starfish and sea anemones, shellfish of every variety. His powers of observation were extraordinary, and his descriptions so accurate that modern scientists have been amazed at their precision. After about 3 years in Assos, Aristotle moved to the nearby island of Lesbos, continuing his biological research. The lagoon at Pyrrha on Lesbos was particularly rich in marine biodiversity, and Aristotle studied it intensively. He described the breeding behaviors of fish, the development of embryos, the life cycles of various organisms. He dissected animal specimens and examined their organs, noting similarities and differences. He was doing science, real observational science, more than 2,000 years before the scientific revolution of the Renaissance. His work in biology was revolutionary in its systematic approach. He tried to classify animals into groups based on their characteristics. He distinguished animals with blood from those without blood, essentially separating vertebrates from invertebrates, though he did not have these modern terms. The blooded animals included what we now call mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. The bloodless animals he divided into groups: soft-shelled creatures like crabs and lobsters, hard-shelled creatures like clams and snails, soft-bodied creatures like octopi and squid, and jointed creatures like insects and spiders. His observations were remarkably accurate. He noted that whales and dolphins were not fish, but air-breathing animals that gave birth to live young, placing them in a category with mammals. He described the mating behavior of cephalopods with precision. He observed that some sharks gave birth to live young rather than laying eggs. He documented the development of the chicken embryo day by day, describing how the heart begins to beat before the body is fully formed. These observations would not be improved upon for 2,000 years. But then, in the year 343 or 42 before the Common Era, Aristotle received a summons that would interrupt his biological research. King Philip II of Macedonia wanted him to return to his homeland to serve as tutor to the king's son, a boy of about 13 named Alexander. This was a remarkable honor and a significant responsibility. Philip was rapidly making Macedonia the dominant power in Greece, and his son would one day inherit a vast realm. To be chosen to educate such a prince was a testament to Aristotle's growing reputation. Aristotle accepted the invitation and traveled to Pella, the Macedonian capital. Here he took charge of the education of young Alexander and perhaps a few other noble youths. What did he teach the future conqueror? We can only speculate, but certainly he would have taught literature, studying Homer's epics, which Alexander would later carry with him on his campaigns. He would have taught ethics and politics, discussing the nature of good government and justice. He would have taught natural philosophy, sharing his observations about the natural world. He may have taught logic and rhetoric, giving Alexander tools for clear thinking and persuasive speaking. The relationship between teacher and student is intriguing to contemplate. Alexander was clearly brilliant, energetic, ambitious, driven by dreams of glory. Aristotle was methodical, systematic, devoted to careful observation and reason. In some ways they were opposites, yet they must have respected each other's qualities. Later, when Alexander embarked on his conquest of the Persian Empire, he allegedly sent back to Aristotle specimens of exotic plants and animals from distant lands, supporting his teacher's scientific research. Whether they remained close after Alexander's education ended is debated by historians. One ancient writer memorably noted that their association made remarkably little impact on either of them, suggesting that these two towering figures went their separate ways without fundamentally changing each other. Aristotle remained in Macedonia for several years, perhaps as long as 8, though much of this period is obscure in the historical record. His wife Pythias died during this time, a loss that must have grieved him deeply. He later entered into a relationship with a woman named Herpilis, who bore him a son whom he named Nicomachus after his father. Eventually, Aristotle decided to return to Athens, the intellectual center of the Greek world. In 335 before the Common Era, at the age of 49, he came back to the city where he had spent his formative years. Athens had changed, and so had Aristotle. Plato's academy was still there, now under the leadership of Xenocrates, but Aristotle did not return to his old school. Instead, he founded his own institution. As a resident alien, he could not own property in Athens, so he rented buildings in the Lyceum, a public gymnasium complex sacred to Apollo Lycaios. Here, in these rented spaces, Aristotle established a school that would rival and eventually surpass the academy in influence. The Lyceum, as his school came to be known, was organized differently from the academy. Aristotle emphasized systematic investigation across all fields of knowledge. He accumulated a library of manuscripts, one of the first great libraries in the ancient world. He gathered specimens for study, creating what might be considered an early museum. He organized research projects, with different students and colleagues investigating different topics. The morning hours were devoted to advanced philosophical discussions, what Aristotle called acroamatic teaching, intended for serious students. In the afternoons, he offered public lectures on more accessible topics like rhetoric and politics. The school grounds included a covered walkway, a peripatus, where Aristotle and his students would walk while discussing philosophy. Because of this, his followers came to be called the Peripatetics, those who walk about. Imagine these walks on pleasant Athenian days, the master and his students pacing slowly along the colonnade, voices rising and falling in argument and explanation, grappling with the fundamental questions of existence. For 13 years, from 335 to 323 before the Common Era, Aristotle ran the Lyceum. These were probably the most productive years of his life. Most of the works we have from him today were composed during this period. They are not polished literary works intended for publication, but rather lecture notes and working drafts, texts meant to be expanded and explained in person. This is why they can sometimes seem dense and difficult. They were never meant to be read independently, but were aids for teaching and further development. During these years, Aristotle laid out a comprehensive system of knowledge encompassing virtually every field of inquiry known to his time. He wrote on logic, creating formal systems for analyzing arguments. He wrote on natural philosophy, examining motion, change, time, and causation. He wrote extensively on biology, compiling his observations into systematic treatises. He wrote on psychology, examining the nature of the soul and the processes of perception and thought. He wrote on ethics, analyzing virtue and the good life. He wrote on politics, examining different forms of government. He wrote on rhetoric and poetics, analyzing persuasion and artistic creation. He wrote on metaphysics, examining the fundamental nature of reality. It is an astounding body of work, encompassing perhaps 31 surviving treatises out of what ancient catalogues suggest may have been 200 original works. Let us spend time now exploring some of these remarkable achievements, beginning with perhaps his most revolutionary contribution, the invention of formal logic. Before Aristotle, people reasoned and argued, but there was no systematic analysis of what made an argument valid or invalid. Aristotle changed this forever by developing syllogistic logic, a formal system for analyzing reasoning. The syllogism is a form of deductive argument consisting of two premises leading to a conclusion. Here is the famous example. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. What makes this powerful is that if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. There is no escaping it. The structure of the argument itself guarantees the truth of the conclusion, regardless of the specific content. Aristotle recognized that you could analyze the form of arguments independently of their content. You could substitute any terms into the structure, and if the form was valid, the conclusion would follow necessarily from the premises. He categorized different types of propositions: universal affirmatives like all A are B, universal negatives like no A are B, particular affirmatives like some A are B, and particular negatives like some A are not B. He showed how these could be combined in different ways to produce valid syllogisms, and he identified the invalid forms as well. This was groundbreaking work. Aristotle created a tool for analyzing reasoning itself, a method that could be applied to any subject matter. He called his logical works the organon, meaning tool or instrument, recognizing that logic was not itself a science, but rather a tool that all sciences must use. In his prior Analytics, he laid out the theory of the syllogism in detail. In his posterior Analytics, he examined how syllogistic reasoning could be used to construct scientific demonstrations to prove conclusions from first principles. The categories examined how we classify things, identifying 10 basic kinds of entities: substance, quantity, quality, relation, place, time, position, state, action, and passion. On interpretation, analyzed the logical structure of statements and how they relate to each other. Topics discussed dialectical argumentation, how to construct and defend arguments in debate. Sophistical refutations examined fallacies, the ways arguments can go wrong, teaching how to recognize and refute bad reasoning. For more than 2,000 years, Aristotelian logic dominated Western thought. Immanuel Kant, writing in the 18th century, claimed that logic had advanced not a single step since Aristotle, being apparently complete and perfect. Only in the 19th and 20th centuries did mathematical logic expand beyond the Aristotelian system. But even today, the study of Aristotle's syllogistic remains part of logic education, and his basic insights into valid reasoning remain sound. Aristotle's approach to natural philosophy was equally systematic. In his physics, he examined motion and change, arguing that all motion involves the actualization of potential. An acorn is potentially an oak tree, and growing into an oak is the actualization of that potential. This teleological view, seeing purpose and ends in natural processes, would dominate biology for centuries. He identified 4 causes for any event: the material cause, what something is made from; the formal cause, its structure or essence; the efficient cause, what brought it about; and the final cause, its purpose or end. Understanding something fully meant understanding all four causes. His biological works represent the culmination of years of careful observation. In History of Animals, he compiled vast amounts of information about different species, their anatomy, behavior, reproduction, and development. He described over 500 different kinds of animals, from insects to whales. His descriptions were based on direct observation and, when possible, dissection. He noted that the dolphin gives birth to live young and nurses them with milk. He described the complex stomach of ruminants. He documented the reproduction of bees, getting some details right, though lacking the tools to see everything clearly. Parts of animals examined the function of different organs and body parts, asking why animals have the structures they do. Why do birds have beaks instead of teeth? Why do some animals have hooves while others have claws? His answers were functional and teleological, understanding structures in terms of their purposes. Generation of Animals explored reproduction and development, describing the formation of embryos and the differences between male and female contributions to generation. Movement of Animals examined the mechanics of how animals move. While some of Aristotle's specific conclusions were wrong, his overall approach was revolutionary. He emphasized observation and classification, seeking patterns and common principles. He recognized that form follows function, that the structures of organisms relate to their ways of life. He understood that living things form a kind of gradation from simpler to more complex, though he saw this as a fixed hierarchy rather than the product of evolution. Modern biologists have found that many of his observations were remarkably accurate, and his systematic approach anticipated the methods of modern science. In ethics, Aristotle's most important work is the Nicomachean Ethics, named either for his son Nicomachus or his father, or possibly edited by his son. This work examines the question of how to live well, how to achieve eudaimonia, usually translated as happiness, but better understood as flourishing or living well. What does it mean to live a good human life? This is the central question Aristotle investigates. He begins by arguing that all human actions aim at some good, and there must be some highest good that we pursue for its own sake, not as a means to something else. This highest good is eudaimonia, happiness or flourishing. But what is it? Aristotle argues that it must involve the characteristic activity of humans, the exercise of reason. Just as the good for a flute player is playing the flute well, the good for a human is living according to reason, exercising our distinctively human capacities excellently. This excellent exercise of reason requires virtue, both intellectual virtues like wisdom and practical judgment, and moral virtues like courage, temperance, and justice. But how do we acquire virtue? Aristotle's answer is through habituation, through practice. We become just by doing just acts, brave by doing brave acts, temperate by doing temperate acts. Virtue is like a skill that must be developed through repeated action. We must be trained in virtue from childhood, forming good habits that become second nature. Moral virtue, according to Aristotle, is a mean between extremes. Courage is a mean between cowardice and recklessness. Generosity is a mean between stinginess and wastefulness. Proper pride is a mean between vanity and excessive humility. This doctrine of the mean is one of Aristotle's most famous ethical teachings. The virtuous person knows how to hit the right mark, responding to situations with the appropriate emotion and action, neither too much nor too little. But Aristotle recognized that virtue requires more than just knowledge of what is good. It requires having the right desires and emotions. The virtuous person not only knows what is right, but takes pleasure in doing it. Someone who abstains from excessive drinking through gritted teeth is not truly temperate. The truly temperate person does not even desire excessive drinking. Virtue involves the whole person, reason and emotion working together harmoniously. Eudaimonia also requires external goods. Aristotle was realistic enough to recognize that happiness is not purely internal. We need health, we need friends, we need at least moderate resources. A person living in extreme poverty or constant pain cannot fully flourish, no matter how virtuous their character. This recognition that external circumstances matter makes Aristotle's ethics more grounded than some other ancient philosophies. The highest form of happiness, Aristotle suggests in Book 10 of the Ethics, comes from contemplation, from the exercise of theoretical wisdom. The philosophical life, devoted to understanding and contemplating truth, represents the peak of human flourishing. This is the activity most like that of the gods, who spend eternity in contemplation. Yet Aristotle also recognized that most people cannot devote their entire lives to philosophy, and he provided a more accessible ideal in the life of moral virtue and active citizenship. Ethics leads naturally into politics, for Aristotle argued that humans are, by nature, political animals. We naturally live in communities, and the city-state provides the context in which humans can fully flourish. His politics examines different forms of government and the principles of good governance. He classified governments according to two criteria: who rules and in whose interest. Rule by one person can be monarchy, if ruling for the common good, or tyranny, if ruling for personal interest. Rule by a few can be aristocracy or oligarchy. Rule by many can be polity or democracy. Aristotle favored a mixed constitution incorporating elements of different forms. What he called polity, where the middle class played a stabilizing role. He emphasized that different forms might be appropriate for different circumstances, but all should aim at the common good. He discussed citizenship, arguing that a true citizen participates actively in ruling and being ruled, in the judicial and deliberative functions of the state. He examined the ideal state, considering how large it should be, how it should be structured, what kind of education citizens should receive. He emphasized that the purpose of the state is not merely security or economic cooperation, but enabling citizens to live good lives, to develop virtue and achieve eudaimonia. Politics is thus an extension of ethics, applying ethical principles at the community level. Aristotle wrote on many other topics as well. His rhetoric analyzed the art of persuasion, examining different types of arguments and appeals. His poetics analyzed tragedy and epic poetry, introducing concepts like catharsis, the purging of emotions through art, and discussing the elements that make for effective drama. His metaphysics, literally after the physics, examined the most fundamental questions about reality. What exists? What is substance? What is being? What causes things to be? These deep questions occupied him throughout his career, and the metaphysics is a complex, sometimes puzzling collection of investigations into ultimate reality. The years at the Lyceum were productive, but could not last forever. In 323 BCE, news reached Athens that shook the entire Greek world. Alexander the Great, who had conquered an empire stretching from Greece to India, had died suddenly in Babylon at the age of 32. The reaction in Athens was complex. Some celebrated, seeing an opportunity to reassert Athenian independence from Macedonian power. Others feared chaos and civil war. For Aristotle, Alexander's death had personal consequences. His Macedonian connections, his role as tutor to the now dead conqueror, his friendship with powerful Macedonians, all made him suspect in the eyes of anti-Macedonian Athenians. Charges of impiety were brought against him, the same charge that had been used to execute Socrates decades earlier. Aristotle saw the writing on the wall. He had no desire to give Athens the opportunity to sin twice against philosophy, as he reportedly said. He left the city, traveling to Chalcis on the island of Euboea, where his mother's family had property. He left the Lyceum in the capable hands of his colleague Theophrastus, who would continue the school's work for decades. At Chalcis, Aristotle spent his final months. He was 62 years old, his health failing. Ancient sources mention a stomach complaint that grew progressively worse. He made his will, providing carefully for his family and expressing gratitude to those who had served him. He asked to be buried next to his wife Pythias. suggesting he never forgot his love for her despite his later relationship with Hercules. In 322 BCE, in his house at Chalcis, Aristotle died. His passing marked the end of an era. He had lived through momentous times, had known Plato and taught Alexander, had witnessed the transformation of Greece from a collection of city-states to part of a world empire. More importantly, he had fundamentally changed how humans think about thinking itself, how we investigate the natural world, how we understand ethics and politics, how we classify knowledge into different sciences. What happened to his works after his death is a fascinating story. Theophrastus inherited his manuscripts, and when Theophrastus died, they passed to his nephew Neleus. Neleus took them to Asia Minor, where they were hidden in a cellar to protect them from collectors seeking manuscripts for the library of Pergamon. There they remained for perhaps a century, suffering damage from damp and insects. Eventually they were rediscovered and brought to Rome, where they were edited by Andronicus of Rhodes in the 1st century before the Common Era. This is how the treatises we have today came to be organized and transmitted. For centuries after his death, Aristotle's philosophy competed with other schools of thought. Stoicism and Epicureanism became more popular in the Hellenistic period. But eventually, Aristotle's star rose again. In the Islamic world, scholars like Avicenna and Averroes studied and commented on Aristotle extensively, preserving and developing his ideas. In medieval Europe, after Aristotle's works were translated from Arabic into Latin, he became known simply as the philosopher, his teachings forming the foundation of scholastic philosophy. Thomas Aquinas synthesized Aristotelian philosophy with Christian theology, creating a system that dominated European thought for centuries. The Renaissance and the scientific revolution brought challenges to Aristotelian physics and cosmology. Galileo's experiments contradicted Aristotle's theory of motion. The heliocentric model replaced the geocentric cosmology. New methods of experimental science moved beyond Aristotle's more observational approach. Yet even as specific Aristotelian doctrines were rejected, his general methods, his systematic approach to investigation, his logical tools, his insights into biology and ethics continued to influence thinkers. Today, more than 2,000 years after his death, Aristotle remains astonishingly relevant. His logic, though now supplemented by modern mathematical logic, is still taught and studied. His ethics continues to inspire virtue ethics as an alternative to utilitarianism and deontology. His biological observations are recognized as remarkably accurate given his limitations. His political philosophy still offers insights into governance and citizenship. His systematic approach to organizing knowledge influenced the structure of universities and the division of academic disciplines. What made Aristotle so important? Several things stand out. First, the sheer breadth of his investigations. He examined virtually every field of knowledge available to his time, from the most abstract metaphysics to the most concrete biological observations. He showed that systematic inquiry could be applied to any subject. Second, his creation of formal logic provided an essential tool for all subsequent philosophy and science. The ability to analyze arguments rigorously, to distinguish valid from invalid reasoning, transformed intellectual discourse. Third, his emphasis on observation and classification in biology established principles still used today. Fourth, his ethical and political philosophy addressed timeless questions about how to live well and organize society. But perhaps most fundamentally, Aristotle exemplified the life of the mind devoted to understanding. He believed that humans, at their best, seek knowledge for its own sake, that contemplating truth is the highest form of happiness. His own life demonstrated this principle. Despite personal losses, political upheavals, and the challenges of his time, he devoted himself to systematic investigation, to understanding the world and humanity's place in it. He wrote not for immediate practical gain, but to preserve and expand human knowledge. His influence on Western civilization cannot be overstated. Our universities, with their different faculties and departments, reflect Aristotelian distinctions between different sciences. Our logic courses teach syllogisms he invented. Our biology courses use classificatory methods he pioneered. Our ethics courses debate virtue theory that traces back to him. Our political science examines forms of government he analyzed. When we think systematically about any subject, organizing our knowledge, defining our terms, analyzing our arguments, we are heirs to methods Aristotle developed. Think of Aristotle in his final days at Chalcis, an old man looking back on a life fully lived. He had been born in a small coastal town, lost his parents young, traveled to Athens as a youth, studied under the greatest philosopher of the age, conducted groundbreaking scientific research, taught a boy who would conquer the world, founded a school that became a center of learning, written prolifically on every subject imaginable, and fundamentally changed how humans understand and investigate reality. If he felt satisfaction in his accomplishments, it was well earned. The evening settles over ancient Chalcis, the sun sinking toward the western sea. In his house, the old philosopher rests, his life's work complete. His books and papers surround him, the fruits of decades of investigation. Outside, the world continues its ceaseless motion, waves washing shores, winds moving through trees, the stars beginning their nightly journey across the heavens. These phenomena that Aristotle had observed and analyzed, seeking to understand their causes and principles, go on as they always have. But now humans possess tools for understanding them more deeply, concepts and methods that will serve seekers of knowledge for millennia to come. His students at the Lyceum continue their work, walking the peripatos, discussing philosophy, building on their master's foundations. Theophrastus will carry on the tradition, focusing particularly on botany, describing hundreds of plants with the same systematic approach Aristotle applied to animals. Others will specialize in different areas, creating a tradition of research and teaching that will influence education for centuries. The library Aristotle accumulated will be a model for later great libraries. His systematic organization of knowledge will shape how humans approach learning. In the centuries after his death, Aristotle's reputation will wax and wane. Some periods will venerate him almost uncritically, treating his pronouncements as unquestionable authority. Other periods will rebel against this authority, rejecting his specific doctrines. But through it all, his fundamental contributions will endure. The logical tools he created, the systematic methods he exemplified, the questions he asked, and the approaches he developed for answering them will remain relevant to every generation of thinkers. Consider the extraordinary range of his investigations. He examined the smallest sea creatures in tide pools and the largest questions of metaphysics. He classified hundreds of animal species and contemplated the nature of being itself. He analyzed tragic dramas and developed formal logic. He studied political constitutions and investigated the movements of the stars. He described the breeding behavior of cephalopods and pondered the nature of happiness. This universal curiosity, this conviction that all knowledge is connected and worth pursuing, defines the Aristotelian spirit. His method was observation, classification, analysis, and systematic explanation. He believed that understanding anything required understanding its causes, its material, its form, what brought it about, and what purpose it serves. This multidimensional approach to explanation recognized that complete understanding requires answering different kinds of questions. A building exists because of its materials, like stone and wood, because of its design or blueprint, because of the builders who constructed it, and because of the purpose it serves as shelter. All four causes contribute to full understanding. Aristotle's teleological view of nature, seeing purpose and direction in natural processes, was eventually challenged by mechanistic science. Yet recent decades have seen renewed appreciation for teleological thinking in biology, recognizing that understanding function and purpose remains essential to understanding living organisms. An eye exists to see, a heart to pump blood, These purposive explanations are not mystical, but recognize that natural selection shapes organs to perform functions, that evolution produces apparent design. Aristotle's intuition that biology requires functional explanation was sound, even if his specific theory of how this comes about was wrong. In ethics, his virtue theory has experienced a remarkable renaissance in recent decades. After centuries of focus on rules and consequences, many philosophers have returned to questions of character and virtue. What kind of person should I be? How do I develop good character? These Aristotelian questions offer an alternative to utilitarian calculations and deontological imperatives. The emphasis on habituation, on actually practicing virtue, rather than merely knowing what is right, resonates with modern psychology's understanding of how character develops. His political philosophy similarly remains relevant. His analysis of different constitutional forms, his concern with the common good, his emphasis on citizenship as active participation, his recognition that states should enable human flourishing, these insights speak to contemporary political debates. His skepticism of extreme inequality, his advocacy for a strong middle class, his wariness of both wealth concentration and mob rule offer balanced perspective in divisive times. The doctrine of the mean, finding the right balance between extremes, may be Aristotle's most practically useful ethical teaching. In a world of polarization and excess, the reminder to seek balance, to avoid extremes, to find the appropriate response to each situation provides valuable guidance. Courage between cowardice and recklessness, generosity between stinginess and wastefulness, proper pride between arrogance and servility. These means require judgment and wisdom, but they describe recognizable ideals of character. Aristotle recognized that ethics cannot be reduced to simple rules. Every situation is unique, requiring judgment about how general principles apply. The virtuous person develops practical wisdom, phronesis, the ability to perceive what a situation calls for and to respond appropriately. This cannot be taught through rules alone, but requires experience, good models, practice in making judgments. Here, Aristotle's ethics connects with his epistemology. Knowledge is not just theoretical understanding, but includes practical know-how, the ability to act well in concrete circumstances. His philosophy of mind, examining perception, imagination, memory, and thought, anticipated issues that would occupy philosophers for centuries. How do we perceive the world through our senses? How do mental representations work? What is the relationship between mind and body? How does thinking occur? Aristotle's De Anima, on the soul, addressed all these questions, arguing that the soul is the form of the body, its organizing principle, not a separate substance that could exist independently. This view avoided both materialism and dualism, seeing mental activities as functions of living organisms. In every field he touched, Aristotle left lasting contributions. His observations of phenomena were careful and detailed. His classifications organized knowledge systematically. His analyses revealed patterns and principles. His explanations sought underlying causes. This scientific spirit, this conviction that the world is intelligible and that systematic inquiry can reveal its workings, has driven human progress ever since. The image of Aristotle that comes down to us is of a methodical thinker, careful, systematic, perhaps a bit dry. But this may not capture the full man. He clearly had deep personal relationships, marrying twice, caring deeply for his children, maintaining friendships throughout his life. His will shows concern for the welfare of his family and servants. He wrote early works in dialogue form that ancient readers praised for their literary beauty. He must have been an engaging teacher to attract so many talented students to the Lyceum. The purely academic image should not obscure his humanity. Living in turbulent times, he witnessed tremendous political changes. The classical Greek world of independent city-states gave way to Macedonian hegemony and then to Alexander's world empire. Traditional ways of life were disrupted, old certainties dissolved. In this context, Aristotle's systematic philosophy offered intellectual anchoring, a way of understanding that transcended political upheavals. His emphasis on virtue and character provided moral guidance not dependent on particular social arrangements. His teleological view of nature suggested inherent meaning and purpose, even amid chaos. His relationship with Plato defined much of his intellectual development. For 20 years, he absorbed Platonic philosophy at its source, learning to think at the highest level, yet he developed his own distinctive approach, more empirical, more focused on the concrete and particular, more willing to accept the physical world as real and worthy of study in its own right. The tension between Platonic idealism and Aristotelian empiricism would shape Western philosophy for centuries, with some thinkers following Plato's otherworldly orientation and others following Aristotle's this-worldly focus. His legacy includes not just his specific doctrines, but his example of systematic inquiry. He showed that any subject can be investigated rigorously, that phenomena can be observed, patterns identified, principles formulated, and knowledge organized systematically. This confidence in human reason, this faith that the universe is intelligible and that careful thinking can unlock its secrets, inspired all subsequent science and philosophy. When medieval scholars called him simply the philosopher, they acknowledged that he had shown how philosophy should be done. In our own time, Aristotelian themes remain surprisingly current. Environmental ethics grapples with issues of natural purpose and human intervention in natural processes. Biotechnology raises questions about the essence of living things that Aristotle pondered. Debates about human flourishing, about what makes life worth living, echo his inquiries into eudaimonia. Discussions of virtue and character education revive his ethical approach. Political controversies about citizenship, the common good, and forms of government invoke his political philosophy. His systematic approach to organizing knowledge remains relevant in our age of information overload. The life of the mind that Aristotle exemplified, devoted to understanding for its own sake, represents an ideal still worth pursuing. In a world often focused on immediate practical results, there is value in pure inquiry, in seeking knowledge because understanding is intrinsically worthwhile. Aristotle believed that contemplating truth is the highest human activity, closest to divine. Whether or not we accept this specific claim, the life devoted to learning and understanding, to pushing back the boundaries of ignorance, to seeing more clearly and thinking more precisely, remains admirable and important. As we conclude this journey through Aristotle's life and thought, picture one final scene. It is evening at the Lyceum, before the final diaspora. The day's lessons have ended. Students and teachers gather in small groups, continuing discussions begun during formal sessions. Some walk slowly along the peripatos, gesturing as they debate fine points of logic or ethics. Others sit beneath trees, reading manuscripts by fading light. The air carries the scent of olive trees and the distant sounds of the city. Here, in this place, for this brief moment, the life of the mind flourishes in something close to its ideal form. Aristotle moves among his students, answering questions, offering guidance, occasionally correcting a misunderstanding. At 61, he is an old man by ancient standards, but his mind remains sharp, his curiosity undiminished. He has spent his life seeking to understand, to organize knowledge, to uncover principles and patterns. The work will never be complete. There is always more to learn, more to investigate, more to understand. But he has made a beginning, has created tools and methods that others can use, has shown what systematic inquiry can achieve. The stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Aristotle has studied these celestial bodies, pondering their motions, their nature, their relationship to the earthly realm below. Tomorrow he will continue his investigations, perhaps working on his biological treatises, perhaps refining his logical analyses, perhaps pondering the deepest questions of metaphysics. For now, he pauses, looking up at the emerging constellations, feeling the cool evening breeze, aware of the fullness of being here, now, alive and thinking, participating in the great human project of understanding. This is his legacy to us, the example of a life devoted to inquiry, the tools for thinking clearly, the systematic methods for organizing knowledge, the conviction that understanding is possible and worthwhile. More than 2 millennia after his death, we remain his students, still using the concepts he developed, still grappling with the questions he posed, still inspired by his comprehensive vision of human knowledge and human flourishing. And now, dear listener, our journey through Aristotle's world draws to a close. We have walked with him from the shores of Stagira to the groves of the Academy, from the coasts of Asia Minor to the halls of the Lyceum. We have seen him observe nature, teach princes, develop logic, examine ethics, and contemplate the deepest questions of existence. His life reminds us that the pursuit of understanding is a noble calling, that careful thought and systematic inquiry can illuminate reality, that knowledge is worth seeking for its own sake. As you drift towards sleep, carrying these images and ideas with you, perhaps reflect on Aristotle's belief that the examined life, the life devoted to understanding and virtue, represents human flourishing at its finest. In our own ways, we too can cultivate wisdom, can seek balance and virtue, can approach the world with curious and systematic observation, can strive to understand. The light Aristotle lit more than 2,000 years ago still burns, illuminating the path for all who seek knowledge and wisdom. If you have enjoyed this journey into the life and thought of Aristotle, I would be grateful if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with others who might appreciate these explorations of history's great minds. Your support helps me create more content like this, bringing the wisdom of the past to life for modern audiences. Until next time, sleep well, dream deeply, and may your own pursuit of understanding bring you fulfillment and peace. Good night.